So in this sixth episode of a complete web workflow from beginning to end, we'll start to cover PHP and using mamp and localhost so that we can create cleaner coding. We can modularize our content into logical sections so that we can have headers and footers and just include them without repeating our code over and over. Just generally how PHP can help us with that. So it's pretty simple. We'll get started. First of all, if you haven't already got mamp installed, as I said before, it's a free trial. A free version completely, and then there is a paid version as well if you want some extra features. I've got the paid version just because you get some nice benefits like having host names. I'll set that up straight away. If you haven't installed mamp, just download it from here, follow the instructions, or if you're on Windows, you can use lamp, which is free as well. So when you've got mamp installed, especially if you've got the paid version, you can come here and create a local host yourself. So I'll actually give it a name here, dev.alex for example, and I'll choose where this file is. So it should be grabbing the files from this folder. This may not make sense yet, but just going over it quickly. It needs to restart the mamp servers. Done that. When I press this now, you'll see that I've now actually looks like basically it's a local website. So I got dev.alex, which obviously isn't a real domain. You can set it to pretty much anything you want. So if you wanted, you could have development.alex.co or whatever, but I usually kind of stick to this structure, so it's always dev dot and then something relevant to the project. The benefit of doing this is so that you can include files from the root of your project. So say for example we went on to create a directory for the blog, our style sheets wouldn't work on this page. I'll quickly show you why. Let's create an index HTML. Where do we get that? Blog. Let's just copy everything we got here and paste it in here. So now on blog, we would expect this to work, but it doesn't, obviously, because it's looking for the style sheet at just CSS styles, just looking for it here, so it's looking for it within the blog directory, which obviously doesn't exist. So to fix that, we would need to do /. So always look for the CSS file from the root, which will work on our local development. But if I were to just open up that index HTML like we were earlier, this still wouldn't work, because what is happening when we go to this now, it's looking for this style sheet at the root of my whole computer. So it's looking for it at file CSS, which obviously doesn't exist there. So hopefully that made some kind of sense, just about why it's nice to have a local host so that you can include files from the root of your website like you would do on a normal server. But let's start to modularize our content here. Let's just delete that example. So I usually create an include folder, just give it a short name of inc, which is at the bottom here using the advanced new file, and now I've got a file called inc-header.php. So we'll grab all the stuff that will probably be on every single page. So all of this section here, from our doc type down to the bottom of our header, because obviously our logo and our menu is going to be on every page, we'll cut that out and we'll paste it into our header. And now I'll just save that back in. All of this document here is currently a .html, so we'll create a new one that's called .php, paste everything there. And now what we can do is we can actually include that include file, which is a bit of a weird thing to say, but include the header PHP file that we just created. I've got a shortcut saved in Sublime, which is include and then tab, and I've already saved it to be this little snippet so that I always use the inc folder, and I've automatically made it to go here. If you've never used snippets before in Sublime Text, they're really good. Just go up to the top here on help, search snippets, it's just in the tools section, and you can choose all the ones that are default within Sublime, or you can create your own. So they're pretty easy to create. How you do it is you say what you want to happen when you press tab on your keyboard. So let's make one quickly. So my first snippet, and we want this to be triggered when you write the word I'm new here. So we save that test snippet. We just save that within our it should automatically tell you where to save it, but it's in your packages and user. Just name it as something relevant with the extension Sublime -snippet. And now anywhere where we type I'm new here and press tab, it gives us the content that we chose in the snippet here. And then you can do even more, go even further and use this kind of syntax, which is called tab triggers. Well, it's called like index tabs, I think it is. And you can tell it that's where your cursor should be after you press tab. So you can do multiple ones of these. So now when we type I'm new here and press tab, our cursor goes over the word this and we can start typing, and now when we next press tab, it goes to this second word. So the reason that happened is we said by here this bit here should be the first tab trigger. So after we've triggered this whole thing to show on screen, put our cursor here so we can type, and then when we press tab next time, put it here so that we can type. The benefit of this is if for anything you write commonly, so this is my website called I like this website because. So now I'm new here, let's just do that tab. This is my website called Alex Wigmore, and I like this website because it's easy. So there we go. You know, anytime you're going to repeat content over and over, like going back to where this started, an include file, for example, this is great for. So here we're using PHP include to include from the server document root, so from the beginning of the domain name, so from here, and then include folder, and we'll include head.php. Now if we go to index.php, we can see nothing's changed, which is actually a good thing. Just means that our header is actually being included. So we've got rid of these 27 lines of code into down into just one. So we're working with a lot less. We can do the same for the footer. So this will be on every page. We'll just cut this out, create a new file inside the include folder called footer, paste it in there and save it. Again, do my little snippet. Again, nothing's changed, exactly the same as we'd like it to be, and we've reduced this even more, so we're just working with the home page content now. And I did mention in the last one as well, I only built 2 of these elements because I know that we're going to repeat them over and over, and this was already getting up to something like 40 lines of code just for 2 of the elements. So by the time we times that by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, by the time we tripled it, it would have been way too much code. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit and use some PHP arrays. If you haven't really had much experience in PHP, you can kind of skip this. It's going to go maybe a little bit too in depth, but I just want to show you the kind of examples how you can use PHP to really modularize your code and get PHP to spit out a basic framework very easily. So if we use this as our basic template that we've made so far, what we'll do is we'll start with the PHP tags, and we'll create an array for my projects. So we'll say projects equals array, and it's actually going to be a 2-dimensional array. So each project will be an array within inside the projects array. Again, if this doesn't really make too much sense, then maybe you can read some more basic tutorials on PHP, but I don't want to kind of tell people the basics if you already know them. So my first one will be NQCMS. That's my first project that I want to show. And then each one of these projects is going to have a name of, and this one for example is NQCMS, and we also want them to have a link so that when you click the link within that project, for the moment we'll just put this as a hash. We also want the project to have a description, and we can just grab this description I wrote earlier. This may not make sense yet, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to loop over this array and spit out this content in a basic little framework. And we also want this content here to be assigned to something, so we'll call this link text. And now, so we've got one element in there so far. We'll just copy this. And we'll paste it in again. This time we'll do our second element, which was the compare deal. So we'll switch the name to be compare deal. We want the link text to be link text is just compare deal for this one. Again, sorry if it doesn't make sense yet. It should magically click when it all appears on screen. Grab this content. So basically we just put it in an array. So now we got our description set up as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to loop over this array and output the HTML. So what we'll do is we'll start a little integer going. So we're saying I equals 0, just to say we're starting at 0. And then for each, what do we call it? Projects. As each project. So for each projects array, we'll call that each project. So we've got the projects array, which is the master one. And then inside of that, there's another level, which is called each project. And then we want to assign those to a key value pair of item, and then we'll loop over it further. So for each projects, each project as usable value. Again, the idea of this video series really is just to get you thinking about the different ways you can use technologies, not so much teach you how to use them, because there's tutorials that all go way more in depth than I should ever bother going into. So what we're doing here is we're creating a variable. This may be something that's new. What happens is you create a variable with the name that it's got. So it's pretty hard to describe actually. So the link will become a variable called link. So really in the background what this is doing is creating a variable called link and giving it the value of hash for the moment. So it's just doing that for each one. So we'll have a variable that we can use called name, a variable we can use link, a variable we can use link text, etc. And then just to quickly get this working, we should be able to echo name and 27 expected variable I. Let's just close this array, the semicolon. And there we go. So this what we've done here, we're echoing the name of each project. If we just put a little BR in there as well, so that there are different lines. So you can see we've turned these two arrays, we're just grabbing the name from this and outputting it to the page. You can kind of see how this may be working. So if, for example, we grab the description next and we echo h2 description, close the h2, we can now see we've got enqueue-cms, the description, compare deal, and the description. So you can kind of see how we're getting away from separating the content and our structure, so that if we ever want to update our content, we can just do it here instead of touching the HTML too much. So again, apologies if it's gone a bit too advanced, but there's plenty of full-blown PHP tutorials. We'll just continue with this to build up the actual structure of it. So let's just steal this code here that we've used before. And so this is the actual framework we're going to be using. So if we echo all of this out each time it loops over it, and we'll replace the relevant bit. So by here we want the name of the project. By here we want the description. By here we want the, what do we call it, the link text. What I'll do for the moment as well, I'll just break this apart so it's not confusing matters. So what's going to happen is this loop is going to run inside of the container, so it's nested exactly the same way as it was before. We'll get rid of these for the moment so we can see just what we're working with the PHP output in. So the moment we got it outputting correctly, so grabbing the right content and the right description, just the image, we haven't done the variable for that, I guess. Yep, so the image here. What I'll probably do is I'll just cheat and use the name of the project, and then make sure we save the images as just the name exactly. So here, for example, we need to make sure that it's called NQCMS in uppercase. And same with the CMPRDL, compare DL, make sure it's all lowercase, and then we'll put the PNG on the end of it, and we'll go for the alt of name again here. There we go, so we've got that far. The next bit to do really is we've only got 2 of our projects in here, so we'll move on through and get the next ones in. I'll just paste those in quickly, hopefully. So the last item in an array, if you're not aware, shouldn't have a comma after it, but all the items before need to have a comma to show that there's one after it for PHP. Just the last one that doesn't need it. Save that and see that we got them all on there. Just missing the world elite image. There we go, so I've got all my projects on there. And in the future, if we ever want to change our HTML, say for example we want to change it from being a H2 to be a H1, we can just change it by here, and voila, all of them have changed. Or the button, for example, if we wanted to have, just cheat quickly, a bigger font size, obviously you wouldn't want to do that, but we want to do it in one place and it changes them all. Whereas before, if we go back to our HTML, this is what it was before. So if you want to change the font size here, we'd have to go here, and then onto the next project, change it there, and that times 10 is going to be a bit of a nightmare. The only thing to consider now is obviously they're all aligned to the left. So what we want to do is every other one, we want to have it to have the class of right as we agreed earlier. So at the moment it's got left by default. So how we can do that, I set up this I earlier as 0. At the bottom of this loop, we can make I become 1 higher as it's an integer. So it starts off as 0. When it finishes this loop, we can do I plus plus. So the first time it runs, it's now going to become 1. I'll just show you that quickly. So there you go. So we got these I's echoing out. So we got 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 6. And what we can do is we can run maths on that in PHP and check for certain situations. So within here, we can say if I is divisible by 2 and equals a whole 0, as in it has no decimal places, we can say true equals even, else true, sorry, done that the wrong way, even equals false, and by here even equals true. So we're saying if the current I is divisible by 2 without any decimal places, then even is true. Otherwise, if you have to divide it and you get decimal places, then it's false. For example, 3 divided by 2 is 1.5, which has a decimal place, so it's not an even number. And then here we can just say this isn't going to be the cleanest bit actually. There's probably a slightly better way to do this. If even yeah, we can just do a shorthand if. So if even is true, then we'll echo out left. If it's not, then we'll echo out right. So what's doing here, again, even will be set to true when it's divisible, false when it's not. So every other one will either be left or right. This should work, I think. Kind of, yeah, so we got right this one and left on this one. Just need to put a space by here. Get rid of that left. And again, there's another place we need to do this. I think we'll just grab this code and put it here. Is there anywhere else? Obviously the only problem now is that the tablet is always coming before the content, whereas before we kind of made it so the content would come before the tablet when it was to the right or the left. So we'll have to try and figure a way of fixing this. What we can do then is when it's a project, when the tablet should be on the right, we can tell it to float right, I guess. Yeah, that works. That was pretty easy. So home, when the tablet is right, we'll tell it to float right. I don't think we actually need this margin right of minus either, actually. Yeah, that works. I think we left that as a H1. We'll change this back to be a H2. There you go. So again, apologies if that was a bit in depth too quickly for you, but hopefully you got a rough idea of how we can use PHP to kind of set up these kind of arrays of our content away from the HTML, and then get a nice little framework of our HTML so that we can just change it in one place in the future if we ever want to spit it out in a different way, or maybe if this image we want to be a different format, or we want to wrap this image now in a link. We can do so. Control Shift W, wrap it in a link. Ahref equals, and now all these images are now links as well. Simple as that. So that was a quick insight into how you can use mamp and PHP. I'll see you in the next one, where we'll probably go on to the about page and some more inner pages. I'll see you in the next one.